The sun was sinking behind the wide-open plains when rancher Luke Harrison spotted something that made him pull hard on his horse's reins: a young woman limping toward the edge of his property, bruised, bleeding, and barely covered with palm leaves she must have grabbed in desperation. Luke slid off his saddle and approached slowly, his boots crunching on the dry grass as if announcing his every step. The woman flinched, pressing her back against the tree as though expecting more danger. She looked like she had been running for miles, eyes swollen from crying, arms shaking from exhaustion. Luke raised his hands softly, speaking in a steady, low voice, "Easy. I ain't here to hurt you." But the woman didn't believe him. Why would she? Out here, strangers didn't usually mean safety. She whispered, voice trembling, "Please, don't take me back." Luke narrowed his eyes, trying to piece together her fear. She wasn't just lost. She was escaping something. Or someone. He laid his hat on the ground, crouched low enough to not appear threatening, and asked, "Who did this to you?" She only shook her head, hugging the leaves tighter. Her wounds told more story than her words: 2 deep gashes on her thigh, a scraped shoulder, and bruises that looked like they were given by more than a fall. Luke realized she needed help first, answers later. "Listen," he said firmly, "you're hurt. You're cold. You're starving. Let me get you to the barn. It's warm there. Safe." The word safe made her eyes flicker, as if she didn't remember what safety felt like. Still, she hesitated. Luke didn't push her. He simply removed his vest and gently set it beside her. "If you want to come, wear this. If you don't, I'll leave it and go." For the first time, her breathing steadied. She reached for the vest with shaking fingers. Luke turned his back to give her dignity. And that tiny gesture, of respect, cracked the ice of fear around her. Slowly she stood, leaning on the tree for balance. Luke kept a respectful distance as he led her toward the barn, where the shadows grew long and the air grew colder. The barn wasn't far, but each step she took looked like pain stabbed through her leg. Twice she stumbled, and twice Luke caught her without touching her skin, only offering his arm for support like a gentleman from a forgotten century. Inside the barn, the warm scent of hay enveloped her, and she seemed to relax for the first time. Luke fetched clean cloth, warm water, and an old blanket. She watched every move he made, still unsure but slowly believing this man wasn't like whoever she had run from. When Luke gently wrapped the blanket around her shoulders, she whispered her name for the first time, "Elena." He nodded once. "You're safe, Elena. Ain't nobody comin' here without goin' through me." She looked at him, searching his face for lies, but found none. Luke Harrison had a reputation in the county: strict, tough, and fiercely protective of anyone on his land. Elena didn't know that yet, but she could feel something honest in his eyes. After cleaning her wounds, Luke asked softly, "You ready to tell me what happened?" She swallowed hard, staring at the barn floor. "Finally," she said, "the man I worked for, he wasn't what he pretended to be. He locked me inside that old cabin by the river when I tried to leave." Luke's jaw tightened. He'd heard of men like that, cowards with power and no soul. "How'd you get away?" he asked. Elena's voice shook as she explained how she broke a window, cut herself climbing out, ran barefoot through the woods, hiding, praying, bleeding. Luke listened without interrupting, anger simmering quietly behind his calm expression. When she finished, she wiped her tears with the back of her hand and said, "Please, don't make me go back." Luke stood, walked toward the barn door, and locked it with a firm click. "You ain't going nowhere you don't want to go," he said. "Not tonight. Not ever." She stared at him, confused. "But you brought me to the barn," she whispered, fear creeping back. "For what? To punish me? To teach me a lesson?" Luke turned slowly and stepped closer, his voice steady as stone. "Yeah," he said. "A lesson." Elena's heart pounded, but before fear could rise, Luke knelt in front of her, not in dominance, but in respect, and did something she never expected. He placed her trembling hands into his own and said gently, "The only lesson I'm teaching you is that not every man out here was born a monster." Elena broke into tears, shoulders shaking, all her walls collapsing. Luke didn't touch her unless she reached for him first, giving her space to breathe, to cry, to release what she'd kept locked inside. Outside, the ranch wind blew softly, but inside the barn a new hope began forming, fragile but real. Luke spread fresh hay in the corner and gave her his own bedroll, insisting she take the cot while he slept on the ground. "You're safe here," he said again. And this time, she believed him. As she drifted into exhausted sleep, Luke sat near the barn door, shotgun across his lap, staring into the night like a guardian carved from iron. Because whatever, or whoever, hurt Elena, Luke Harrison knew one thing for certain. They were coming. And he'd be ready. Before she closed her eyes completely, Elena whispered, "Why are you helping me?" Luke looked at her softly, his voice low. "Because someone should have helped my sister, and didn't." Elena didn't understand what that meant, not yet. But she would. And that truth would change both their lives. To be continued. Night settled over the Harrison Ranch. Like a heavy blanket, the sky stretching endlessly with stars that pulsed like distant warnings. Elena lay on the cot, wrapped in Luke's old blanket, her breath shallow but steady, while Luke sat guard by the barn door, shotgun across his knees, hat pulled low, his silhouette carved in the dim lantern light like a statue carved from grit and grief. He didn't move except to glance toward her whenever she stirred in her sleep, making sure her nightmares didn't pull her backward into the darkness she'd escaped. Hours passed, and the wind grew colder, whispering through the wooden boards. Elena jolted awake from a terrifying dream, gasping, clutching her chest. Luke was by her side before she even realized she was no longer alone, kneeling with that same calm strength in his eyes. "It's all right," he murmured softly. "You ain't there anymore." Tears slipped down her cheeks as she whispered, "What if he finds me?" Luke's jaw flexed. "Then he'll wish to God he never came this way." She looked at him for a long moment, studying the rugged lines in his face, the tiredness in his eyes, the way he carried an ocean of pain behind his calm words. Finally she asked, "What happened to your sister?" Luke hesitated, then exhaled slowly. "Her name was Marin. Sweetest soul you ever met. She trusted the wrong man. Thought she could fix him. Thought kindness could change a monster. One night she came running home just like you, bruised, scared, clothes torn. I promised I'd keep her safe." His voice cracked for the first time. Next morning, he came looking for her. Elena swallowed hard. What did he do? Luke stared into the lantern flame. He set fire to the barn with her inside. I was too late. Elena covered her mouth, horrified. Luke's voice hardened. I vowed that day I'd never let another woman suffer like she did. Not on my land. Not while I'm breathing. He stood and walked back to the door, checking the dark fields again. Elena suddenly understood why he'd taken her without question. why he'd wrapped her wounds with his own hands, why he stood guard like a soldier unwilling to fall asleep. The wind shifted, carrying with it the faint crunch of footsteps, or maybe hooves, somewhere along the fence line. Luke froze. Slowly, he blew out the lantern flame, plunging the barn into shadows. "Stay quiet," he whispered. Elena's heartbeat thundered in her ears as Luke cracked the barn door open a fraction. The moonlight revealed a lone figure near the fence, leading a horse, scanning the property like a wolf searching for prey. Elena's breath caught. "That's him," she whispered. Luke's grip tightened on the shotgun. "Not tonight." He stepped outside silently and closed the barn door behind him. Elena rushed to the cracks in the wood, watching with her hands trembling. The man mounted his horse and rode directly toward the barn. Luke walked out into the open, standing tall, unflinching, blocking his path with the stillness of a storm about to explode. The man slowed, glaring down at Luke. "You got something of mine," he growled. Luke didn't blink. "She ain't yours." The man sneered. "She works for me." She ran. "I'm taking her back." Luke lifted the shotgun slightly. "She ain't cattle to be claimed. She's under my protection." The stranger spat on the ground. "Move." Luke's eyes went cold steel. "I won't say it again." For a moment, the planes held their breath. Then the man reached for his revolver. Elena screamed, but before the sound even left her throat, Luke fired, one deafening blast that echoed across the night and sent the man flying off his horse. The silence afterward was suffocating. Elena gasped, hands shaking, tears streaming down her face, not from fear, but from the overwhelming realization that Luke had risked everything for her. Luke walked to the man, checked his pulse, then stood up and signaled to Elena it was safe. She burst out of the barn, running across the dirt with bare feet until she reached him. She froze only when she saw the body. Luke put a hand on her shoulder gently. "It's over." Elena collapsed into his chest, sobbing into his shirt, gripping him as if he were the only lifeline she had left. Luke wrapped his arms around her carefully, protective, steady, grounding her like an oak tree in a storm. "I told you," he whispered into her hair, "ain't nobody taking you from here." As dawn crept over the horizon, Luke saddled his horse and prepared to ride into town to tell the sheriff what happened. Elena followed him, still wrapped in the blanket. "Luke," she whispered. "Why did you do all this for me?" He looked at her, eyes soft but fierce. "Because everyone deserves someone who'll stand for 'em when they can't stand alone." She didn't know what to say, so she simply placed her hand over his. Luke tipped his hat slightly, a quiet gesture full of meaning. "Heal first," he said. "Then decide what future you want. Whatever you choose, you got a place here." She nodded, tears gathering again, not from fear this time, but from hope she'd thought she'd never feel again. As Luke mounted his horse, he glanced back at her one more time. "And Elena, when your strength comes back, don't forget to tell your story. Someone out there needs to hear it." She smiled faintly, standing straighter than she had in days, realizing her story wasn't ending, it was just beginning. And to the viewers watching their journey unfold, subscribe to the channel now, because stories like this, filled with courage, healing, justice, and heart, are just getting started. Your support keeps these powerful tales alive.